Here's a number that should make you sit up and pay attention. Over 20% of videos shown to brand new YouTube users in 2025 were categorized as AI slop. 20%. That means if you created a fresh YouTube account today and started browsing, 1 in 5 videos the algorithm would serve you would be low-quality, mass-produced, artificial content lacking any meaningful human effort. And before YouTube's major crackdown, these slop channels were extracting $117 million annually. $117 million from content that was essentially digital junk food. Welcome to Mindcast. I'm Will. And today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and controversial topics of our time, the collision between artificial intelligence and human creativity. This is episode 1 of our 3-part trilogy exploring the seismic shifts happening right now in content creation, peer review, and the creator economy. Today's episode, AI content, peer review, and creator concerns. Next week, we'll tackle AI versus creator workflow disruption, where we'll explore exactly how AI is reshaping creative processes and which opportunities and threats are emerging. And we'll wrap up with AI as creative assistive technology, examining how the most successful creators and researchers are using AI not as a replacement, but as an amplifier of human capability. Here's what I promise you'll walk away with today. 3 game-changing insights that will fundamentally shift how you think about quality, trust, and authenticity in our AI-saturated world. We're going to explore the massive content flood that's drowning platforms in synthetic material, unpack the growing trust deficit that's making people question everything they consume online, and dive into the psychological anxiety that's gripping creators worldwide. But here's where it gets really fascinating. We're also going to examine whether cutting-edge AI tools like Google's Gemini Deep Research can actually serve as legitimate academic peer reviewers. Spoiler alert, the answer is more complex than you might think. Let's start with key insight number 1, the content flood. Folks, we are literally drowning in synthetic content, and the scale is absolutely mind-blowing. That 20% figure I opened with, that's just the tip of the iceberg. AI slop, and yes, that's the actual technical term, was chosen as the 2025 Word of the Year by both Merriam-Webster and the American Dialect Society. Let that sink in. The phenomenon is so significant that linguists made it their Word of the Year. AI slop is defined as digital content made with generative artificial intelligence that is lacking in effort, quality, or meaning, and produced in high volume as clickbait. It represents what researchers are calling the industrialization of mediocrity. And here's what's really wild about this phenomenon. It's not just an American problem. We're seeing massive slop operations in Spain, where 20 million users followed these channels, Egypt, Brazil, and India. There's one Indian-based channel called Bandar Apna Dost that accumulated 2.4 billion views with what can only be described as surreal, low-context animations. The economics here are crucial to understand. Throughout 2024, the barrier to entry for video production collapsed completely. Tools capable of generating scripts, text-to-speech voiceovers, and AI-generated visuals allowed faceless channels to automate entire production pipelines. These operations leveraged what I call the law of large numbers approach to content creation. The math was simple and brutal. Even if 99% of your videos failed, that 1% that caught the algorithm's attention would generate enough ad revenue to justify the minimal production costs. But here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. The backlash against this content isn't just economic, it's deeply psychological.
Remember the uncanny valley effect? That creepy feeling you get when something looks almost human but not quite? Well, in 2025, we've evolved beyond that. Researchers are now documenting what they call the authenticity valley. Content that's conceptually hollow, even if it's visually perfect, triggers the same rejection response as a wax figure. People can sense when there's no human intention behind what they're consuming, and it makes them deeply uncomfortable.
This brings us to key insight number 2, the trust deficit. On July 15, 2025, YouTube made a policy change that might seem small, but is actually revolutionary. They renamed their repetitious content policy to inauthentic content. Think about that semantic shift for a moment. Repetitious describes the form of content. It's about structure and format. Inauthentic describes its provenance and value. It's about where it came from and whether it has genuine human intention behind it.
This policy shift fundamentally redefines value in our digital ecosystem. Here's the crucial part that gets lost in a lot of the creator discourse. YouTube isn't banning AI. They're making a careful distinction between AI as a tool and AI as a replacement. Creators are encouraged to use AI for creative support, brainstorming, dubbing, background generation. The key differentiator is human guidance versus human replacement. The set it and forget it model of content creation, where an AI agent generates everything and uploads it without human review, is effectively dead for monetization purposes.
But the trust deficit goes way deeper than just content policies. We're seeing high-profile identity theft cases that are validating creators' worst fears. Mark Reed, the CEO of WPP, the world's largest advertising company, was targeted by scammers who used voice cloning and YouTube footage to stage a fake meeting. Think about that. If the head of a massive corporation isn't safe, what does that mean for individual creators? This is why we're seeing the No Fakes Act being introduced in Congress, providing federal protection against non-consensual digital replicas.
YouTube responded by introducing likeness management technology within their Content ID system. It's fascinating. They're trying to automate the protection of identity the same way Content ID protected copyright in the 2010s. We're essentially building a digital immune system against synthetic identity theft. But here's the thing. This technological arms race is creating a fundamental shift in how we think about authenticity and trust online.
Which brings us to key insight number 3, the creator's anxiety. There's a fascinating psychological split happening in the creator community right now. I call it the theft camp versus the tool camp. The theft camp, primarily artists and illustrators, view generative AI as fundamentally exploitative. They argue that models are trained on stolen labor without consent, and they see any use of generative tools as a moral failing. This sentiment is fueled by ongoing legal battles like Anderson versus Stability AI, where the core issue is the lack of consent in training data. But here's the surprising statistic. 65% of video creators had adopted AI tools by 2025. For the tool camp, AI isn't the enemy, it's a workflow accelerator. They're using it for mundane tasks like transcription, color grading, and thumbnail ideation, which frees them up to focus on high-value creative work. The problem is that audiences often can't distinguish between these two very different approaches. A creator using AI to edit their own vlog gets unfairly lumped in with slop farms by viewers who've been sensitized to anti-AI narratives. This anxiety is creating some really interesting behavioral changes. There's actually a counter-trend emerging, where creators are deliberately including imperfections, awkward pauses, unpolished edits, to signal their humanity. They're using messiness as a form of authenticity signaling. It's like digital creators are developing their own version of the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, where imperfection becomes a marker of genuine human effort. Now, here's where things get really complex, and we move into more nuanced territory. Can AI actually serve as a legitimate peer reviewer?
This question is at the heart of a massive debate happening in academic and professional circles right now. Google's Gemini Deep Research represents a quantum leap in AI capability. Unlike ChatGPT, which does quick, linear web searches, Gemini operates as an autonomous agent. It creates research plans, breaks complex queries into subtasks, and can analyze over 100 sources simultaneously.
The real game changer is its context window, over 1 million tokens. That means you can upload an entire manuscript, reference list, and supplementary data, and the model holds the entire structure in working memory. Where Gemini excels in peer review is absolutely fascinating. It's phenomenal at structural integrity, identifying logical inconsistencies, unconnected arguments, and structural flaws. It's incredibly effective at formatting and compliance, and the speed advantage is undeniable. It can generate critiques in minutes that would take humans hours, potentially addressing the reviewer fatigue that's plaguing academic publishing.
But, and this is a massive but, there are critical limitations that make AI peer review dangerous if used incorrectly. First, there's what researchers call knowledge blindness. Gemini Deep Research relies on the open web, which means it generally can't access paywalled academic repositories like JSTOR or Elsevier unless specifically integrated. When researching niche topics, it often fails to distinguish between peer-reviewed scholarship and random blog posts or Reddit threads. Then there's the hallucination problem. Large language models can generate plausible but completely false citations or facts. In peer review contexts, an AI might invent a gap in the literature that doesn't actually exist simply because it can't see the relevant paywalled papers. There's also what's called sycophancy bias. LLMs tend to overrate content generated by other AIs, creating a closed-loop feedback cycle, and they often default to safe critiques, avoiding the harsh but necessary deconstruction that human experts provide. So here's our synthesis, the big picture that ties everything together. Authenticity has become the ultimate technical and economic filter in 2025. This isn't just a buzzword anymore. It's a measurable quality that algorithms and audiences are actively filtering for. On YouTube, the algorithm now filters for human value. The inauthentic content policy is a mechanical attempt to separate creation, which requires human intent, from generation, which is just statistical probability. In research and academic contexts, the value of peer review lies in human judgment that simply cannot be automated. An AI can check if a citation format is correct. That's syntax. But it cannot judge whether a citation is relevant to the shifting paradigm of a field. That's semantics. And semantics require lived experience and domain expertise that current AI simply doesn't possess.
Here are your actionable takeaways. For creators, the backlash is against slop, not tools. The key is transparency and intentionality. Use AI to amplify your unique voice, not to replace it. The creators who are thriving in this environment are those who use AI to handle the mechanical aspects of production while doubling down on the human elements that make their content distinctive. Think of it as the centaur model, human creativity augmented by AI capability.
For researchers and academics, use AI for structural editing, proofreading, logic consistency checks, and red teaming your arguments. Do not use it to validate novel scientific claims, conduct primary literature reviews without manual verification, or judge the significance of work. Think of AI as an incredibly sophisticated spell checker and logic checker, but never as a replacement for domain expertise.
For everyone, we're entering what I call the authenticity era, where the ability to prove genuine human involvement becomes a competitive advantage. AI provides the floor, the baseline capabilities that everyone now has access to, but humanity provides the ceiling, the distinctive perspective, lived experience, and intentional creativity that audiences are increasingly craving.
As we move toward 2026, the distinguishing feature of premium content, whether it's a viral video or an academic paper, will be unmistakable evidence of human effort and intention. We're witnessing the emergence of authenticity as both a technical standard and an economic necessity.
That wraps up episode 1 of our trilogy. Next week, we're diving deep into AI versus creator workflow disruption, where we'll explore exactly how these tools are reshaping creative processes from the ground up, which jobs are actually at risk, which new opportunities are emerging. We'll look at real case studies of creators who've successfully integrated AI into their workflows and others who've been completely blindsided by the disruption. We'll also examine the psychological and economic factors that determine who thrives and who struggles in this transition.
I'm Will. This has been Mindcast. And remember, in an age of infinite generation, intention becomes infinitely valuable. See you next week when we tackle the workflow disruption that's reshaping creative industries worldwide. Thanks for listening, and keep thinking deeply about the world around you.